of African origin across the world, whether they are in Trinidad and Tobago, or in Brazil, or in Australia, or in Europe, or the United States of America, everywhere. They now recognize that we as a people must do things for ourselves. And I think that that is a great thing. I see people of our race saying that the time has come for Africa to do the things that she ought to have done. She can no longer afford the luxury of relying on other civilizations. I've seen during this period in Uganda a solar bus being launched in Kampala to offer services for commuters. Unprecedented and monumental at once. I've seen in Senegal the Pasteur Institute developing kits to test COVID-19. I've seen in Madagascar the Malagasy Institute of Applied Science coming up with what possibly could be a cure for COVID-19, the COVID organic. I've seen Africans talking about the need to manufacture so that we can produce our own cars, produce our own robots, produce our own telephones, produce our own earth-making equipment. I hear Africans saying that we can no longer rely on Europeans and Indians and Chinese to supply us with the medicine that we consume when we are sick, that we have the wherewithal to produce those. I've seen Africans saying that this is the opportunity to make real the promises that we have made to each other for a long time and embrace the fourth industrial revolution, not as consumers, but as producers. I've seen these things happening in the continent, and it can only tell one story, and that story is that we are going to take care of ourselves. And I'm happy that those opportunities and that new thinking portends well for our young Africans. I want to believe that African universities, whether it is the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa, or the University of Zambia, or Ante Cheikh Diop University in Senegal, or Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria, or University of Nairobi, or Dar es Salaam, or Makerere, that young men are now beginning to ask the question, what kind of education are we receiving so that we may be creators, not consumers? Many of you will remember those famous words of Fela Anikula Pokuti in the song, "Teacher, don't teach me nonsense." This is the time that we are beginning to ask those questions so that our universities can be revived again, so that our young men can acquire knowledge that will enable them to be producers of new technology which can serve this continent. I remember in the 1980s, when the Fura Bay University in Sierra Leone, in Freetown, was appropriately described as the essence of Africa, as a place where knowledge could be produced. I look forward to younger people going into that sector and giving meaning to it. I want to see young people going into science, going into engineering, going into technology, and that technology to inform how we engage in the areas that will influence our lives. I want to see Zimbabwe become the breadbasket of Africa as it once was, because it can be. And younger people now have an opportunity to use mechanized agriculture so that they are able to produce. They should not say there are no jobs. No, we are saying that we can change the face of Zimbabwe We can change the face of Malawi. We can change the face of Angola. We can change the faces of these countries if young men and women are prepared to seize the opportunities that are now emerging. And one can even go a little further. Look at the arts. You ask yourself what Nollywood now does in production of movies. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. There was a time when our young men and women were made to believe that films could only be made in Hollywood or Bollywood. Today we know that Nollywood can produce films. Today we know that Bongowood can produce films. Today we know that Ghanaians can produce movies. We know that South Africans can produce movies, and that is a multi-million industry. And if we go into the area of sports, this is the time that our young men and women, particularly our young men, should stop being supporters of Arsenal, Barcelona, Juventus. Why don't we have our own football clubs playing across the continent of Africa, and the money that we use to pay that is paid through TV rights can be paid right here in the continent of Africa, so that it becomes a multi-billion-dollar industry. These are things that are capable of being done. Why can't we ensure that the mobile phones which all of us are consuming are manufactured in the continent of Africa? I'm very happy that in Kigali in Rwanda, that they are now assembling robots. Each one of us, or a good number of us in Africa, have these gadgets called the mobile phone. And all of them are produced outside of the continent of Africa. Suppose, and I'm speaking to young Africans, suppose our universities were to make a deliberate measure to say that in the next 5 years, under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, Kigali in Rwanda and Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo is going to become the hub of making mobile telephone. In any event, coltan or rare earth, which is a mandatory ingredient in every phone, is found in Africa. Can we not create jobs and opportunities through innovations and inventions? We can do that. Today, we are using media such as this, and this media, Zoom, has suddenly become a multi-million-dollar company. But who owns Zoom? It is owned by somebody in the United States of America. Who owns Blue Jeans? It is owned by somebody in the United States of America. Who owns Google and all these other media that we Africans are gleefully consuming as we communicate in this new age produced and imposed on us courtesy of COVID-19? Why are our young men and women not engaged in innovation so that we can have our own media of communication? The Chinese are already doing that. We should stop this idea of looking to Amazon. We should stop this idea of looking to Facebook. We should stop this idea of looking to Twitter. We should stop this idea of looking to Instagram. We can produce these things here in the continent of Africa, and we will create jobs. Remember, we are 1.3 billion of us. That is perhaps one of the largest markets in the world. But what we are doing, as Ali Mazrui rightly said at one time, we are in the business of consuming what we do not produce and producing what we do not consume. Time has changed, and the time is now. Today, as we talk about COVID, if you look at the beds that are used in hospitals in many African countries, if they are not imported from Sweden, they are imported from the United Kingdom. And if they are not imported from the United Kingdom, it's from Germany or from China or from some other place. Can't we make beds for ourselves? Can't we make equipment, medical equipment for ourselves? Can't we make medicine for ourselves? Must it be Roche? Must it be Novartis? Must it be Johnson & Johnson? Can't it be somebody in Zimbabwe? Can't it be somebody in Nigeria? Can't it be somebody in Kenya? Can't it be some company in Kenya? The time has come and the opportunity is now. How can it be, my fellow Africans? How can it be that little Israel can be a technological hub, and our entire continent is not a technological hub. Today, if you go into any supermarket in Africa or any outfit in African urban areas, there is this gadget, the thermal gun, which we are buying from China, creating jobs in China and South Korea. Can't those thermal guns be made here in Africa? We are going to buy them. When we resume flights, all the security gadgets that we pass through are made outside, and we complain because those jobs are then created in those parts of the world. This is the time. If there was ever a time when Africa has to pose and ask fundamental questions, this is it. I remember not so long ago, historically, in the 1980s, Europe and America came here and told us, because they are in the business of telling us what to do, and we appear to be in the business of accepting everything they tell us. And many times they just misguide us. They came and told us, redefine your economies. We have something called structural adjustment programs. Africa became a laboratory and a guinea pig for young economic graduates from their universities, like Harvard, like Oxford. They experiment on us. The structural adjustment programs failed lamentably everywhere in Africa. Then we realized that, and African leaders sat down in Lagos, Nigeria, and came up with the Lagos Plan of Action. The idea was to ensure that we trade among ourselves, that we stop exporting primary products, that when we produce our gold in South Africa, in Burkina Faso, in Namibia, or in Botswana, or in Tanzania, we refine that gold, that we don't export our diamonds raw. We said that in Lagos, and we did nothing about it. Then we came up with something called the New Partnership for African Development, NEPAD, headquartered in South Africa. We have been grappling with it, and nothing has happened. Now we have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which will begin to operate, I'm now told, in the month of January, the year 2021, but whose headquarters have been established in Accra, in Ghana. This is the opportunity to make real the promises that we made to ourselves. This is the opportunity that we must make real the things that will change our lives, because the world now shows us that we cannot rely on the world. We must rely